You're watching Experience Comic Culture and Sales, streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
Hey, everybody. Kevin Feige, he was just at CinemaCon telling the audience that he arrived and is returning to the first in-person Marvel creative retreat that they've had in the last 3 years because of the pandemic and everything else. And at that retreat, they're planning out and mapping out the next 10 years of Marvel movies, which will include both existing characters, new characters, and of course, this little thing called the multiverse. Well, looks like we're going to have stuff to talk about until at least 2032. Stay tuned for the Dan Wickline Show. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Dan Wickline Show. It is Wednesday, April 27th, and lots of stuff going on lately. CinemaCon has been going big time. I guess Marvel showed up and gave everybody like the first 20 minutes of Doctor Strange. Disney also gave them the first 30 minutes of Lightyear. And the buzz for it is just phenomenal. I guess Doctor Strange just hits the ground running. There's no setup. You basically are thrown into action. So it looks like it's going to be a fast-paced movie. And everything I'm hearing is really positive. Also, last night was the penultimate episode of Moon Knight. And it was quite the emotional journey. We got some comic-related name drops. But I don't want to say too much since not everybody has had a chance to watch it. So we're going to shelve that conversation until tomorrow. So come back here tomorrow at this time. We will talk all about Moon Knight, and we normally I like to call it a spoiler conversation, but I think this week is going to be a therapy session. Yeah. It's definitely going to be a therapy session. But so what we are going to talk about today, we got three main topics for the day. Number one is the yesterday's announced sequel to The Batman. Everybody's going, oh my God, who's going to be the villain? Who's going to be the villain? I have some thoughts on that I'm going to share, where I'd like to see them go. Then we're going to talk a little bit about El Muerto, the new Sony spunk, the Sony universe of Marvel characters. That character who appeared in, if you think about it, he's only appeared in 2 comics more than you. Obama has appeared in as many comics as El Muerto. So we're going to do I want to say a deep dive, but there is so little on this character. It's a lot like a deep dive into that little plastic kiddie pool that you buy and you put in your front yard for the kids to run around in. And then after that, we are going to talk about Harry Potter, the disastrous Fantastic Beast movie that's in theaters, and how maybe Warner Brothers can get back on track with that franchise. So that's going to be the breakdown of the show. But we're going to dive right in. Like I said, you're joking, but if they made a Obama superhero movie, I'd be down. Yep, I probably would be too. But all right, so we are going to dive into first thoughts on the Batman sequel. Now, no one was surprised by the announcement yesterday. The film did $750 million in 45 days. And we know it's 45 days because that's the theatrical window that everybody's working with now, not the usual 90 days. So 45 days, and then they hit in theaters, and it's the second highest viewed movie on HBO Max, falling only behind Mortal Kombat. And I saw a list. It had Mortal Kombat, it had the Suicide Squad, it had Wonder Woman 1984, Dune, all of these other movies, and the majority of them debuted on HBO Max. So Batman's sequel that was in theaters for 45 days then shows up on HBO Max and kicks almost all of their ass except for Mortal Kombat. That shows you this is really a very popular movie. The reviews on it have been great. Now, I know a lot of people have been dogging on it too. I'm not exactly sure why. I've heard some interesting, I mean, there's some definite problems with the movie. I think the musical score is way too repetitive. I think the way they filmed the wingsuit was amateurish. You know, I understand that they probably just slapped a GoPro on the guy's head and threw him out there, but it just looked like they threw a GoPro on his head. And then, you know, like I said, there's a couple other things. I don't know if the large group of Riddler villains or Riddler henchmen at the end were earned, things like that. But overall, I think it was an amazing amazing movie. So I am looking forward to the sequel. I love the world that Matt Reeves is building. And of course, Reeves is coming back to write and direct. Also, Robert Pattinson and Zoe Kravitz will be back. So along, you can thank Jeffrey Wright and Andy Serkis. And they've created all of these amazing characters, but everybody wants to know, well, who's going to be the villain in the next movie? And first thing, you got to look at it as it's going to be 3 movies. They're not just doing 2. They do trilogies now. Everything is a trilogy. So you can expect it lay out that way. Also, you have to keep in mind that they have 2 HBO Max series that they're going to do. And that's going to be, one is focused on Colin Farrell's character of the Penguin, his rise to power, I guess, now that Carmine Falcone is gone, Salvador Maroni is in prison. So there's this vacuum now, and the Penguin is going to step up. And then the second one is going to be set in Arkham Asylum. So you might get Paul Dano's Riddler, Barry Keoghan's Joker, and some other characters that have been, new ones introduced to focus on that. Or it might be the history of Arkham, which might set up the Court of Owls, that type of thing. There's a lot they could do, but so you're building this world through 2 other shows. So some of those characters could get introduced in those other shows and then brought into the movie. So that's always a possibility. But, but you also have to keep in mind that having just watched the movie, Reeves set up quite the universe. He already introduced Catwoman, Joker, Penguin, and the Riddler, plus laid hints for Hush and possibly Bane. I mean, you tell me what you guys think. He pulls out that vial of liquid, shoves it into a hole in his costume, and suddenly he gets up and he's real. I've heard people call it adrenaline, but adrenaline isn't green. That looked like venom to me. So to me, that was a nod to Bane. Yeah, that just remember. JD thinks, with my beard and hair, I would make a fine addition to the wizarding world of Harry Potter and Fantastic Beasts. They can call me. Come on. I'm good with that. I do have some acting background. I mean, I did play a dead body once. So, and I do have theater background. So I would happily go in. So, yeah. Warner Brothers, call me. I'm in. All right. Let's, I think the key to figuring out, so my thought on that is, with all these characters introduced in the first movie, you have to think that maybe we're not just going to get one villain. We didn't get just one villain in the first movie. We got, introduced all these. So now who the key villain is going to be, that might take some figuring out. Now, I don't think they're going to necessarily go with the fantastical creatures. Killer Croc, Solomon Grundy, Poison Ivy. Those are a little stretch credulity a little bit, you know. The ability to control plants, someone who's half crocodile. Those things seem, or basically a giant zombie. Those seem a little outside of the range of what Matt Reeves is doing. And I know he said Mr. Freeze is somebody he would like to work with. And that's, you know, maybe you could do a grounded, down to earth one, but to the best of my knowledge, there's no technology for a freeze gun yet. I mean, JD, if I'm wrong, Man-Bat, there's another one. Man-Bat's a hard one to do, but you've got a lot of characters that would be much easier to do. You know, Victor Zsasz, stuff like that. And the other thing is, I don't necessarily think they're going to go with characters that Christopher Nolan used, or at least as the main villain, because they're still kind of fresh in the mind. So I'm thinking Two-Face, Ra's al Ghul, Scarecrow, and possibly Brain will not be the lead. They may show up as secondary villains. We may be introduced to Harvey Dent. We may get hints at Ra's al Ghul or Jonathan Crane, but, you know, and maybe more Venom hints. But I don't think we're going to get them as the main antagonist. Another thing to factor in is that Matt Reeves was heavily influenced by Jeff Loeb. And I don't mean he was heavily influenced by Jeff Loeb's writing. Jeff Loeb was his writing teacher in college. So he has an actual personal connection to Jeff Loeb. And we already see how much The Long Halloween played into the Batman. So it wouldn't surprise me if he wasn't working up to another Jeff Loeb story, which is Hush. You know, we got the hint, we got the name drop of Edward Elliot. It wouldn't be that much to bring in Thomas Elliot. And you could do the Hush story because, I mean, some of the key components are already introduced, Catwoman, Riddler, Joker, and then you could bypass some of the other ones, like you don't need the trip to Metropolis. So you can eliminate the part of Superman, Lois Lane, and Poison Ivy, but still get into the other characters. That some of them could be introduced in the TV series, and then bring them all into the movie. Because that's the thing about the Hush series, Hush story in the comics, is it really tapped into all of Batman's history. And that's what I think I really loved about it, because you got into Robin and Jason Todd, the Huntress, but you also got into all the different villains. All of them were acting out of character. You got, I mean, just Jim Gordon's a big part of it. Alfred's a big part of it. So I could see that being the culmination of Matt Reeves' story. Maybe Hush is the third movie. You know, maybe they've got something in between they do, but they continue setting it up for Hush. And maybe that in between one is Court of Owls. You know, that's a much more grounded storyline too. He seems to like to play with the mysteries and stuff. So you do Court of Owls for the second story. You introduce Tommy Elliott as part of the research into what's going on with the Court of Owls. You know, that type of stuff. So I could see them doing that. You know, Court of Owls 2, Hush 3, and then I think you've got a really interesting arc. You could flip that too, but I think I'd really like to see them establish a relationship between Tommy and Bruce. The one thing that I didn't like in the Hush comic series is that there was no establishment of the character until, they wedged it in the book. So, had they introduced Tommy in the first movie, then yeah, we could get to it. But I think by name dropping his dad, then introducing him in number 2, and then having him be the big betrayal in number 3, that would be fantastic. And then also you get to play with the Court of Owls stuff in number 2. And you could bring along some of the other more grounded villains. Like I said, Mad Hatter, Victor Zsasz. You could bring in the Scarecrow, and Ra's al Ghul and stuff like that if you want, but in minor roles. So your major villains are Riddler, Court of Owl, and Hush. So that's what I would like to see them do, because, again, Poison Ivy is a great villain in the comics, but she comes along with powers that don't make a lot of sense in a grounded universe. It's like if they wanted to bring in any outside characters, outside heroes into the series, I think you could do it with certain characters. You could definitely bring in Green Arrow. You could bring in The Question, stuff like that. But if you start trying to bring in Zatanna, Dr. Fate, Superman, Martian Manhunter, all of that is just outside the realm of what Matt Reeves is creating. And I don't think Robert Pattinson's Batman works for that. I think Ben Affleck's Batman was created for that, but not Robert Pattinson's. Yeah, I think Green Arrow would be a fascinating character to bring in. And you could even kind of use him in this Superman place. He's been around a lot. Well, so yeah, that's what I'm thinking on the Batman, the second one. Because again, I think you ruin it if you start going into the fantastical. If you brought in Solomon Grundy was part of the Long Halloween. So was, Fear Gas, I could see them coming up with. A freeze gun is still a rough one for me, but someone controlling plants. Firefly. Firefly makes a lot of sense in this type of universe because flamethrowers we have. Hugo Strange would be interesting. I know Gotham played with him a little bit. They got B.D. Wong from Law and Order, which I thought was great casting, because we've spent so much time with thinking about B.D. Wong as a psychiatrist that when he came in as Hugo Strange, it just clicked. It's kind of like when The Flash cast Jesse L. Martin as Joe West. It's like, yeah, we've been seeing him as a cop for years. There's no stretch there. We just, boom, he's a cop. Yes, absolutely. We just waiting for Briscoe to show up as his partner. So Hugo Strange would be a really interesting one. I don't know if Hugo Strange is a compelling enough villain. It really would depend on the story, around it. But I don't know if Hugo Strange is a compelling enough character to carry a movie. Again, he could be a minor character, but yeah. The more I think about it, the more I like the idea of it being Court of Owls and then Hush. I think those two story arcs fit in well for what Matt Reeves is doing, because you've got the whole, it's got that conspiracy thing, the betrayal, the conspiracy, the mystery. That's what the first one really had, and I could see that carrying on. Plus, a lot of people are big on the Court of Owls. The Talon character that we didn't, it's a newer villain, but he's really getting into the Batman lore. He's really getting in there quickly because he clicks. He hits all the right buttons for a Batman villain, but brings with him a completely different aspect than any of the other villains. He's kind of maybe, had Bruce been picked as an owl if Thomas and Martha had lived, if they had been more involved with the court. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm thinking he's going to go Court of Owls, then Hush, maybe flip-flop those two. But, again, it's hard to tell. Whatever he does, I think he's going to keep it grounded. If Riddler hadn't come across as a serial killer, I could see him going with Victor Zsasz. But my guess is Zsasz is going to be somebody, if we get Victor Zsasz, it'll be somebody that we see in the TV series. We'll see him in Arkham, that type of thing. Or it's going to be something Penguin has to deal with. Because you need to have antagonists for a character, even somebody like the Penguin. So you need to have somebody, he's trying to build the streets back up, get his crime syndicate going, and suddenly there's a serial killer out there. That's something I could see him actually wanting to take care of so he could get the streets back again. Yeah, Zsasz was funny in Gotham, but he was a disappointment in Birds of Prey, and he was barely a character in the Nolan series. I mean, he was one of the people that got out of prison or out of Arkham, but yeah. Zsasz is a character they could do a lot with, but I don't know, you'd really go down that Seven hole and or that David Fincher hole to do it, but I don't think he's a big enough villain to carry a Batman movie. What do you guys think? Any villains you'd like to see in the next Batman? Do you want it to be Mr. Freeze, which is the one Matt Reeves has said he'd love to do? Do you think it'll be Hush, which we got a little reference to, or Bane? Do you think we'll get Joker as the lead villain at some point? Or will he stay in the backgrounds as a manipulating character? Let me know what you think. We're going to go to a quick commercial. We will come back, and then we'll talk about El Muerto. Be right back.
Comic Collectibles is a pretty straightforward show. You got Rex here, he sells the comics, and you got Rockin' Robbie, he knows about the comics. And finally, John, well, no one really knows what John does. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's a great guy, but he just keeps showing up. Come to think of it, I don't even really know how he gets in here. Anyway, awesome comics, rare books, rarer signatures, slabbed books, and amazing cover sketches by Ken Hazer and others. Simple formula, you want the comics, you buy the comics. To sum up, Rex sells the comics, Robbie knows the comics, and John, who might possibly be a ghost. I mean, seriously, has anyone ever seen him show up or leave? Comic Collectibles with Rex and John, Mondays from 6 to 8 Eastern on The Experience. Comic Culture and Sales.
everybody. Welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. Maybe an echo effect. Can I get an echo effect? Something. All right. No, I can't get an echo effect. Fine. Okay. Before we jump into our next topic, Jay says he would like to see Professor Pig. If they do fantastical, I think they'll save it for the end of the trilogy. Arrow kept itself grounded for a bit, then gradually had the superpower element. Arrow was doing great until they went and created that whole sub-team where Mr. Terrific got his costume, and Curtis became a costume character, and they brought in Ragman, and everybody else in that series was a grounded character, and then there was Ragman, and I don't know why they brought Ragman in. They didn't keep him around long, but it was like pulling off the scab. It was like, boom, we're doing the super now. So, but then Flash would show up, and occasionally they'd have to kind of explain that too. But John Diggle was always the best way to deal with that. The fact that he always just kind of stared in disbelief at some of them, or every time he got moved with super speed, he had to throw up. So he was the way that Arrow went, no, we're still grounded. This other stuff is weird. So I like that a lot. All right. Let's talk about Sony. Sony yesterday, that doesn't freak you out, John Diggle? Oh, that doesn't freak you out? Yeah. And JD says, one of these days I'm going to explore the CWDC universe. I loved Arrow. Loved the Flash for most of it. Supergirl was pretty good at times. Batwoman season 1 was pretty good. Black Lightning was good. My problem was right after Crisis and Arrow was ended, I just couldn't bring myself to get back into it because Arrow is what got me into the shows. And I think I finished up Black Lightning, and I just haven't watched any since. So basically when they ended Arrow, that's when I left. But they also ended Arrow and the world suffered a pandemic. So I think this is all on the CW. All right. Yesterday, Sony announced a lot of stuff. The Venom 3 was in production. Madam Web is moving forward, which, again, I know a lot of people are like, really? We're getting a Madam Web movie over Black Cat, over Silver Sable, over Spider-Woman or Spider-Gwen? Madam Web. But if you're head-scratching about that, then you're probably really kind of curious about yesterday's announcement of an El Muerto movie. Because I know a lot of people, when they said, yes, we're going to do a movie with the Spider-Man anti-hero El Muerto, and it's going to star Bad Bunny, there was a lot of Googling. I mean, a lot. Because half the people, no, I'd probably say a good 80 to 90% of people had no idea who El Muerto was. And probably just as many had no idea who Bad Bunny was. So I would be interested to find the person that actually knew both. I want to know the person who went, oh yeah, we're getting a Lucha Libre movie with Bad Bunny that's tied into the Spider-Verse. It's exactly what I wanted. If you're that person, please, I would like to have you on the show. I would like you to come on and be a guest, and we can talk about it and what you would like to see in the El Muerto movie. You know, what is where your love for El Muerto comes from, if you're that person. and what you like about Bad Bunny, his rapping, his wrestling. Let me know. Contact me here at the Experience. We'll have you on the show. All right. So I do what I do when it comes to a character like this. I decide to do a deep dive. And the problem is, this is the kiddie pool of deep dives because there really isn't a lot about this character. And there's a good chance, rather than, there's a good chance that they decided that, okay, we have access to this guy, Bad Bunny, and we have this character, and Bad Bunny used to be a professional, or is a professional wrestler, along with a rapper and an actor. We could do this and tap into the luchador or lucha libre craze, and also have representation, because basically this will be for the first Puerto Rican-led superhero movie in the MC of a Marvel character. So I kind of get that, but again, there's not a big fan base for the character that I'm aware of. Now, if you don't know who Bad Bunny is, we'll start with his real name is Benito Antonio Martinez Ocasio. And again, he's a Puerto Rican rapper born in Puerto Rico. He's a rapper, a singer, an actor, and a professional wrestler. He's wrestled for WWE. He was also in Fast 9 or F9. He's got a bigger part in Bullet Train. And Bullet Train also features Aaron Taylor Johnson, who was just cast as Kraven the Hunter. So it kind of feels like Sony, who is huge on this Bullet Train movie, they dropped like the first 15, 20 minutes of the movie at CinemaCon yesterday, and people went crazy for it. But it seems like somebody at Sony is just going down the cast list of the Bullet Train and going, okay, we can put him in this movie, and him in this movie, and her in that movie, and what do we do with Sandra Bullock and Brad Pitt? Any bets on which Spider-Man character or Spider-Man villain Andrew Koji is going to end up playing? Anybody? All right. So the character himself. El Muerto is a super-powered wrestler whose abilities come from his luchador mask that has been passed down from generation to generation along his family. Each version of El Muerto is then confronted by, or he has to face off against the oppressor, or his oppressor, El Dorado. And basically they have to beat El Dorado if they want to remain alive and to keep their powers. Now, the newest member of the family, or the growing up, is Juan Carlos Estrada Sanchez. And he is trained his entire life by his father, Marcos Estrada de la Garcia. And it's all to train him to be the next wearer of the mask. Currently, Marcos wears it, but it's supposed to go to Juan Carlos. Well, this isn't the life Juan Carlos ever wanted. He did what he was supposed to be trained, but it wasn't his choice to do. So when it came time for Juan Carlos, who's still young at the time, to actually be confronted by El Dorado, he cowers. He is in terror for his life because he has no faith that he can beat El Dorado. Well, Marcus steps in to save his son, and in doing so sacrifices himself. Now, El Dorado had a lot of respect for Marcus. So out of that respect, he tells Juan Carlos that he has 10 years, that he is to travel the world, find his bravery, and to find a masked wrestler, take them on, and unmasks them. Now, I'm okay with this. This is a pretty good movie coming up so far. Good Lucha Libre movie. All right. So 10 years later comes around. El Muerto has run out of time. He must face a masked wrestler and defeat him. And he has decided to go to New York City and get J. Jonah Jameson's help to set up a charity event because he has decided that El Muerto will take on Spider-Man. And if you think, well, Spider-Man's not a wrestler, remember, the first thing he did when he got his powers was wrestle. So technically he was a wrestler. Well, Spider-Man goes, oh, it's a charity event. All right. But he's pretty confident with his powers and stuff, he's going to win. But El Muerto actually has super strength, some stuff like that. He's able to not only hold his own, but actually get to the point where he's got Spider-Man pinned and is starting to remove his mask. Well, this was in an era in Spider-Man that he was wearing the Iron Spider suit. So he had those extra talons, stingers, and he uses one of them out of reflex. He doesn't think about it. He just does it. And one of the stingers hits El Muerto with a paralyzing poison, and El Muerto ends up in the hospital. Now, he's going to recover. It's not a lethal dose, but El Muerto has failed. And now El Dorado is coming for him. El Dorado appears at the hospital to kill Juan Carlos. Well, Peter Parker is kind of upset with himself for having actually kind of cheated. You know, he used the stinger. So he's there kind of keeping an eye on him when El Dorado attacks. And Spider-Man teams up with El Muerto to defeat El Dorado. Now, they don't kill him or anything like that. They kind of just force him to escape. Force him to flee. So I would like to tell you the next parts of El Muerto's comic book career, but there isn't any. That's the extent of his time in the comics. Now, I can tell you his powers. The mask he has grants him superhuman strength and endurance. He's a highly skilled wrestler, extensively trained in both freestyle and shoot-style grappling. The character first appeared in Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man number 6 in May of 2006, which was written by Peter David and drawn by Roger Cruz. He then was in the follow-up issue number 7, and that was basically it, other than a mention post-Civil War, or, well, the introduction of the Superhuman Registration Act, when the new director of S.H.I.E.L.D., Tony Stark, is going through files, and he classifies El Muerto as a foreign national who does not normally reside in the United States, but has made his presence known there and requires further monitoring. That's the only other reference to El Muerto in Marvel Comics. All right, let's be honest here. Sony's making a Lucha Libre film, which is a great idea. You know, I like that. I actually think that's a great idea because they're popular. There's a big cult following. Maybe it'll get some other people involved. I don't know. And they're kind of hedging their bets by tying it into the Sony universe of Marvel characters. But unless Spider-Man shows up, there's no real link to the MCU or their Marvel universe at all. I mean, it really is kind of a strange decision to make to do this film. I mean, could be great, but you're not really getting an A-list Latino actor. You're getting a guy who started off his fame through TikTok and YouTube. Now he's got a Grammy and stuff like that. But, he's a singer, he's a rapper, a wrestler, and then the acting seems to be kind of a newer thing. So can he lead a movie? I don't know. It seems like at this point, if I was Sony, I'd go to them going, let's swap something. You give us something and we'll give you back Spider-Man. Because you'll give us a franchise, like, give us Predator and we'll give you this. Or give us Aliens and we'll give you this, something. Because they don't really seem to know what they're doing other than when they have Kevin Feige working with them. Venom movies did well, but they're not great. They're decent. Morbius is unwatchable from everything I understand. So, but then again, we give Sony grief for their decisions, but Warner Bros. Has just greenlit a Kite Man animated series for HBO Max. So I give up. I don't get it. I don't get what they're doing anymore. Kite Man, El Muerto. JD, let's go to break. I need a minute.
Join the party. Head over to our link tree to find all the links for everywhere the experience is all the time.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show. We're doing a couple different topics today. We've already talked about potential Batman villains for the Batman 2, Electric Boogaloo. Also, we talked about El Muerto, gave you the deep dive on that, the kiddie pool deep dive. But before we move on to our final topic, what I think they should do to save the Harry Potter franchise, I want to remind you guys that coming up right after this is Comic Collectibles with Rex and John. They got some really neat books lined up, including some Greg Land signed Star Wars book, some Ken Hazer commissioned cover art. That's the new term they're using for sketch covers. And a couple of CGC graded books, good stuff. So you want to tune in for that. After that, at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, is Wednesday Warriors. So I know that they'll probably be talking about Moon Knight or the Batman, because they were going to talk about the Batman last week, and then the show didn't happen. So there's a good chance they'll be talking about the Batman, so you want to stick around for that. All right. Jay says that Kite Man was awesome in Harley Quinn, but as a side character, he was more of a joke. But what I'm understanding is the series will be about Kite Man and Golden Glider basically doing heists and stuff to pay to keep open the bar they bought. So we shall see. I haven't finished Harley Quinn yet. I think I've watched all of the first season, but I haven't gotten back for the second yet. Sony doesn't get it. Half of what makes the villain so great is the hero. I give zero about these villains solo movies Sony is failing with. That's true. That is very true. But Sony has these characters. They're trying to make a go of it. Why there isn't a Black Cat movie, which I think could be more interesting. They could go with the Prowler, Puma. But I don't know. I could see making a good Lucha Libre movie with a decent budget. But the fact that he ties him to Spider-Man doesn't seem to really matter. So I hope they don't expect it to be Venom level money. If they do it and they keep it their expectations that it's going to be a small movie, then fine. But yeah, Kraven's a villain, and having Kraven as his own movie doesn't make a lot of sense either. Venom, yes. Morbius, maybe. I do need to see it and kind of figure out what they did wrong there, why that went south so bad. Besides Jared Leto, it can't just be Jared Leto. There has to be more to it. But from what I understand, the writer and star director couldn't even talk to Marvel when they were doing the movie. So at least that's the latest thing I've heard. Okay. Whenever I do the show on our breaks, I go out and I check the entertainment news sites to see if anything popped up that I should add to the show. And this one just kind of hit me. One of my favorite 80s metal songs is Turn Up the Radio by Autograph. It's just one of those that I used to do a lot of road trips with Tone Rodriguez. We'd drive to conventions. And there was two songs that always played while we were out. One was Turn Up the Radio, and the other was Uncle Tom's Cabin. And Turn Up the Radio became kind of an anthem. It wasn't officially a road trip till that song played. Well, I guess they just reported that the bassist for Autograph, Randy Rand, has passed away. So that was on the news that I just flipped over to see. So anybody who's a fan of Autograph and Turn Up the Radio, Randy Rand has passed away. I didn't catch, it was at the age of 62. So, which is still young. I mean, in Rolling Stone, if he was in the Rolling Stones, he'd still have 20 years of performing ahead of him. So, all right, let's go to our third topic of the day. We are going to talk about Harry Potter. Oh, by the way, what's a radio again? Is it? Yeah. Yeah. You say that, but you realize that. Look at the fact that we still hang up phones, even though what are we hanging it up on? Okay, so we're going to talk about the Harry Potter franchise and where they've gone wrong. Harry Potter needs to make some big changes if Warner Brothers wants to get any more money out of this franchise. Right now, the creator has some serious issues, and a chunk of her fan base have turned on her. And she has said some stuff she really shouldn't have said. So, the latest film, Fantastic Beasts, The Secrets of Dumbledore, has turned in the worst numbers in franchise history. It's the lowest opening of any movie. It's the second lowest, or second biggest drop between week 1 and week 2, and the difference was the opening for the other movie, which was the second part of Deathly Hallows, had made 162 million opening weekend and dropped from 43 million and dropped all the way down to like 6th place. Not a good opening. So now I've heard a lot of people say they didn't really care about the new movies because it wasn't what had got them originally into Harry Potter. You know, Harry Potter is children's book about a young people learning magic and finding their way in this strange new world. While the new series, it started off as fun. You know, I like the idea. Oh, we're going to take up on the textbook Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. We're going to follow Newt Scamander and going to introduce all these neat characters. That was fun. But when they started making it this Dumbledore versus Grindelwald thing, it kind of became very convoluted. It was much more geared towards adults than it was the kids. And I know that the kids who watched the movies have all grown up now and are adults. But when you go back to a series like this, do you want it to be adult? Do you want it to grow up with you? Or do you want to go back and relive the fun that you had reading those? And I think that's where it's gone wrong, is I think they've kind of lost their way. Now, I think Warner Brothers should, in a lot of ways, look at what Star Wars has done. Coming off of Rise of Skywalker, the fan base was heavily divided, and the interest in the franchise was really starting to wane. The problem was that they were just kind of retreading old ground. Rogue One was just a bridge between the prequels and the first set of movies. Solo focused on a part of Han Solo's life that, you know, yay, the Kessel Run. And while I actually liked those two movies and didn't really like the prequels that much, even the prequels were reliant, or not the prequels, the sequels were reliant on Luke, Leia, Han, and Vader for a story. You know, they could have just done new things, but instead they had to take away the happy ending from Return of the Jedi and step all over the characters that we grew up loving. Now, then The Mandalorian came out, and fans got excited again. The reason they did is this is a story of a single bounty hunter from a fabled group of warriors. And while they used some familiar races and places, they weren't that dependent on the big three characters or the characters from the main trilogy. They could move away from that. And sure, we got a baby Yoda. Yeah, see, that's the thing. It's Rogue One. And Rogue One, to me, isn't a full, complete movie. It's a bridge because there's no real character growth or anything else. It's just the story of how something happened, you know? But, so The Mandalorian, it didn't go back to Star Wars as a reference point. It went back to what George Lucas used as his inspiration for Star Wars. It went back to Westerns and samurai movies, you know, Akira Kurosawa, and the old Saturday matinee serials. I mean, yeah, they've brought in some legacy characters in season 2, but they're still minor characters. They're, you know, Luke Skywalker pops up, but it doesn't become the Luke Skywalker show. You know, it's still The Mandalorian. So I think that excitement and going back to the original inspirations has revitalized the franchise. And now people are excited again for shows like Obi-Wan Kenobi and Andor and are willing to take these adventures again because they're going back and looking at what the inspiration was. So I think Harry Potter needs to go back and look at what made the initial films and books great. Not just trying to expand on characters in those films. The lines between good and evil were much clearer in the early movies. You know, and they have HBO Max, so I think they should forget about doing a movie. I think they should forget about Fantastic Beasts, and they need to go back to the idea of students learning magic. Make a TV series. Don't return to Hogwarts. Focus on another school, maybe one that's just starting up, a schoolmaster with an idea of doing things differently, or students who were rejected from other schools, or follow a kid who was homeschooled in a sense, grew. His parents were training him, and then a tragedy happens, and he has to join one of the existing schools, and suddenly he's a teenager joining a group that have been together since they were young, and he's the new kid. These are the type of things that work in the Harry Potter books. A school that wants to teach muggles and wizards together. Okay, there we go. There's a great idea right there. So that's what I think they ought to do. They need to step away from trying to expand on, Dumbledore and all of that. Nobody really went and saw the movies for Dumbledore. He was an interesting character, but he was a mentor figure. It's like, oh, well, they could look and do Harry Potter's parents' life with when they were in school with Sirius Black and Remus Lupus and Severus Snape. But do we really want to see that? What we want to see is that young era. Take away the knowing what's going to happen. Stop going into the past. Deal with the now, and give us the time when a kid goes and gets his first wand again, or he's randomly trying one of Bert's every flavor beans, or he's getting his first mug of butterbeer. Just give us the awe that is supposed to come with the magic. The wizarding world is supposed to be awe-inspiring. And what we got, like I said, a tiny bit of that in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. But as soon as we started dealing with Grindelwald and Dumbledore, all of that went away, and we got this conspiracy thing. So I would like to see Warner Brothers go back to the roots of the Harry Potter franchise, use HBO Max to do it, create a new series, focus on the students and kids again, and recapture that. And I think that is what could revitalize the franchise, not beating the Dumbledore horse to death. So, all right, guys, I am just about at the end of the show. Jay says, Dan rewrites your favorite universe and makes it good again. I'm in for it. Again, got a universe you need help, call me up. I'll take care of it for you. All right, guys, remember to stick around for Comics Collectibles, followed by Wednesday Warriors. I will be back tomorrow to have our therapy session for the 5th episode of Moon Knight. And I want to remind you guys, as I'm about to go, every time we get to the end of one of these series, we get to the final episode, we say the same thing. It's going to have to be a big episode because they've got so much to finish. I don't know how they could possibly wrap it up in one episode, and they should have done longer, all of that stuff. And then Marvel wraps everything up in one episode, usually only about 40 minutes, and we're happy. So next week, we'll get a final episode of Moon Knight, and we'll see if they can do it again. So, all right, everybody. Have a good night. See you tomorrow for our Moon Knight therapy session.
Thanks for tuning into The Experience. Help us out and hit subscribe over on YouTube and click the bell when you do. Need some help? Scan the QR code in the bottom corner.